FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is 11/7/18. Well, the blue wave turned into a blue trickle. There was a red wave in the Senate, somewhere 5 incumbents defeated in one election. That is remarkable when you consider that over the past 19 elections, only 4 incumbents, senatorial incumbents, were defeated. That's the exception rather than the rule, but we're not here to talk about politics now. But we do love it when you get involved in the show and you email us, and I get a torrent of emails, and I know I'll get one after you hear my next guest. Would you believe that the Talmud, that's the Jewish book of wisdom, really touches upon so many of our current conundrums, our political difficulties, our societal ills. And our good friend is back with us, Rabbi Ganz. He's updating his book, Uncommon Sense, Solutions to Modern Political and Social Challenges Based on Ancient Jewish Wisdom, and in parens, the Talmud. And Rabbi Ganz, we haven't had you on in a while, but welcome back. It's really a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Hey, so we were talking pre-call, and I said, hey, I'm Jewish by birth. I'm a Jew, familiar with the Talmud, not like you. I haven't studied it my entire existence, but very familiar with it. And I asked you, where does the Talmud come down on cannabis legalization, which was the big winner last night? 3 out of 4 states approved Michigan recreational. I don't remember the other 2 states, but I'm sure your emails will remind me. Again, the email address is kl@kerrylutz.com. So the Talmud, and we were talking, the Talmud is really kind of libertarian in its leanings, which maybe explains a lot about what our founding fathers were talking about when they created the Constitution and created this country.
I'm just going to shy away from the word libertarian, although I'm not necessarily disputing what you said. As far as this particular issue, the Talmud has Talmudic thinking has a very specific formula. And the formula is that when it comes to civil things, the government should be in charge. Like the government builds roads, the government keeps us safe from violent crime and from white-collar crime. The government has to be involved with protecting the medicines we take. But in terms of my own living of a moral life, this should not be the business of government. For example, the government shouldn't get involved with who I marry. That's my own moral choice. The government, and it doesn't get involved with whether I drink, whether I don't do exercise or go to sleep on time. And the government really should not get involved with taking drugs if that's what I want to do. It's not that it's a good idea, but once the government starts making moral choices for me, there's no end to it.
Yeah.
And if you'd ask me, I would say legalize drugs. The war against drugs is one big failure. You can buy them anywhere. It consumes, I heard, more than half of all police budgets. Yeah. And it's getting nowhere.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's so true. The government that governs best is that which governs least. But, people on the left, not so much with cannabis, with so many other issues, they're always going to say, but look, Rabbi, you can drink your double gulp soda from McDonald's or wherever. You can supersize, but when you get obese, then the government is going to have to take care of you. They're going to be paying for your surgeries, your medications, everything else. So we need to protect you from yourself so we can protect society. I mean, that basically is the argument for the nanny state, isn't it?
Yeah. But I kind of think it's a flawed argument. It may be the argument, but I don't agree with it. First of all, it's very inconsistent. It doesn't, if you exercise, it will give you better health and longevity. The government doesn't decide whether you should, whether you exercise or can't control it.
They'd like
to control what I eat. If the food is healthy, even if I'm not obese, you can be skinny and eat junk all day and be very unhealthy as a result. It's just there has to be some guiding principle. You can't decide these things individually because it will end up being inconsistent. So I think the Talmudic view is, if it's up to me and my personal choices, that's my business. That's
hands
not
off.
their business.
It's really hands off. It's respect for the individual to make the right decisions for that person, or to suffer the consequences when you don't make the right decisions, and hopefully learn from it. When you've got this Uber nanny like Mayor Bloomberg lurking over you saying, don't eat that, don't eat this, make sure you get your exercise today. Oh, and while you're at it, make sure you're doing a whole bunch of other things, and don't cross the light. Don't cross against the light. The thing about cities, Rabbi, in our modern world is they are the most restrictive. Big cities are the most restrictive in telling you what you can do and what you can't do. Don't pick up that cell phone when you're driving because, hey, you might get in an accident. Right? I mean, where do you draw the line, I guess, is the question, because some things, by our own admission, yours and mine, are valid concerns of government, but most of what the government does today really is not valid. Yeah.
I mean, I feel that the idea of overarching principles having a bearing on these issues will prove to be surprisingly accurate, more accurate than deciding where the government should get involved on a case-by-case basis. So, for example, I agree that the government should not be doing any interfering into my own, well-being. But as for cell phones, there I would go the other way, based on these principles, and I would say that the government should restrict my cell phone use, not to protect me, but they have the duty to protect other innocent people. So if this is going to harm someone else, then that's where they step in. You can't harm someone else. They are entitled to protection of government, and they have to enforce anything that could cause real damage to someone to the extent that they can. And therefore, I think they should limit cell phones if it's provable that it causes accidents. And that's what I would say.
Yeah. So, and that's the problem is everybody agrees there's a need for government to get involved in certain situations, like creating an army to protect us from enemies without, and having police forces to protect us from enemies within. But then inevitably abuses set in, like what happened in the last campaign, the last presidential campaign, where the intelligence services and the law enforcement services, FBI, CIA, whomever else, were basically turned against a political candidate. And not just that, because we know that political candidates have been bugged many times in the past by the opposition. But then, even after, once the president became the president-elect, the candidate became the president-elect, then there was a plan in place to try to depose him, to try to get him kicked out. And, it sprung from legitimate concerns about protecting the state. That's why these organizations were created in the first place. So it's kind of like once you open the door, anything can happen, can it?
Yes. Actually, I'm not here to plug my book. I really am not, but I actually have a chapter in the book. I believe it's called Righteous Momentum. And it discusses this very phenomenon you alluded to, and that is, even when something serves a proper purpose, and it's necessary, and you can't deal without it. Every good thing carries with it the potential that it will create a momentum and morph into something that's dangerous. So, as you said before, we need an army, we need police, and I actually discuss that in the book. We have to have that. We can't say we'll be libertarian. We need an army. We need a police force. But once we have an army, it can be put to, unhappy use, things that make us very unhappy because it can get carried away. So although we need a security service, but there has to be some control mechanism that it isn't turned into a monster, which people do try to do.
Absolutely. Hey, we're talking with Rabbi D.B. Ganz and his upcoming update of his book, Uncommon Sense, Solutions to Modern Political and Social Challenges Based on Ancient Jewish Wisdom, the Talmud. Hey, and right now, probably haven't heard of Blinkist, but if you love to read and you just don't have the time to get all those books in, you got to go to Blinkist. Blinkist.com/FSN. I'm a reader, and you got to check that out. The list of books that you want to read or those people suggest you read, it's just never ending. It's always expanding. You simply don't have time to read them all. And our sponsor, Blinkist, has solved your long list of must-reads once and for all. Blinkist is the only app that takes thousands of the best-selling nonfiction books. It distills them down to their most impactful elements so you can read or listen to them in under 15 minutes, all on your phone. With Blinkist, you will expand your knowledge. You'll learn more in just 15 minutes than you can in almost any other way. Plus, you can listen to it anywhere you like. I've gotten Blinkist. You should definitely get it too. Look, I like to listen to Blinkist while I'm driving off to an undisclosed coffee shop for my morning shot of Java. The Blinkist library is massive, from timeless classics like War of the Worlds to current Amazon bestsellers all over the place. You just can't find a better source of books and information out there. My personal favorite is The Silk Roads by Peter Frankopan, and it's titled A New History of the World. It's just an 18-minute read. Amazing book. I know you'll like it. And the best part is that Blinkist is constantly curating and adding new titles from best of lists. So you're always getting the most powerful ideas in a made-for-mobile format. It really is amazing. There's over 5 million people using Blinkist now to expand their minds 15 minutes at a time. You should get started today. Right now, for a limited time, Blinkist has a special offer just for you FSN community members. Go to Blinkist, that's Blinkist.com/FSN, and start your free 7-day trial today. That's Blinkist, Blinkist.com/FSN. Get started today on your free 7-day trial. You can cancel anytime. Again, Blinkist.com/FSN.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
And we are back with Rabbi D.B. Ganz. We're talking about Uncommon Sense, his update to his book, and deals with using ancient Jewish wisdom in the Talmud, found in the Talmud, to address political and social challenges. So, Rabbi, we've got these social justice warriors, and they seem to want justice only for themselves, not for anybody else. They seem to have a very twisted notion of what justice is. How does the Talmud deal with this type of extremist personality?
Well, as far as the social justice warriors, I think that something that is so manifestly hypocritical really doesn't deserve to be called social justice. I believe in the people that fight for some of these social justice things will fight just as hard to deprive other people of social justice that they don't agree with. So it's more a case of a deceptive title rather than a case of social justice. And it's a very interesting phenomenon to try to understand how people can get involved in something that's so manifestly self-contradictory. So people, for example, people are so careful about something being said that in any way triggers them. I used to do work on campus in Cambridge at Harvard and MIT. The word trigger has become a very big word. But somehow they can, heap abuse on people they don't agree with, they don't like, and there's no problem with triggering anybody.
Yeah.
Do you believe in triggering or do you believe in not triggering? Be consistent. How do you explain that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And these people really don't seem to have well-reasoned positions, to say the least. And it's kind of like they're just kind of disguising their childishness, their real immaturity with this moral outrage. And it's not a very pleasant thing, is it?
No, it's not a very pleasant thing, and it's also dangerous. I'm a bit of an old timer, but I remember when I was a student studying Talmud. So it was during my first years. It was in the '60s when the protests against the Vietnam War were tearing the country asunder almost. So I remember standing with my rabbi, listening to or reading about these protesters, and they were doing a lot of damage. I think there was if I recall, I think they trashed a library at Columbia University. They did something. They took it over. I don't remember exactly. In the name of promulgating justice. So he said, "What justice do they believe in? Their modus operandi is to take over a library that doesn't belong to them, to do damage to it without offering to pay. Why is that justice? And why is that fairness? And why is that liberty?" You see that this is the most dictatorial thing in the making. Yeah. And kind of history is repeating itself. But look at what they're doing in the name of sensitivity. They're insensitive to everybody. And so forth. Isn't that so?
It's very true. But their lack of self-awareness and lack of intellectual curiosity really makes them oblivious to the really morally bankrupt, the moral bankruptcy of their position here. So, the Talmud deals with this. I know. How do you make people who are unaware of themselves, have no little or self knowledge or curiosity, how do you get them to open their eyes to the bigger world that's not just outside them, but within them?
Well, first of all, I'm not on the radio like Mr. Lutz. I have a small platform. I have my book that I wrote, which thus far hasn't sold a lot of copies. I'll admit to that. But in that book, there is a chapter on understanding liberalism, and these issues are dealt with. How there can be such a two-faced belief system. How come? That's one section. Another section deals with trying to understand these speech restrictions that they're trying to impose on us. Another section deals with the press. How it is that the press is so completely in the hands of the liberal elements. I mean, it is a free market item for sale. And finally, there's a chapter on the consequences of this movement, or the impact on the moral fiber of the society. Because when freedoms are being abridged this way, and people are talking about goodness and kindness and interfering with the rights of others, undermining traditional premises of morality, which is part of this liberal, modern liberal movement, what does it do to the world? What does it do to Western civilization? So, if people read my book, that's the most I could do. In the meantime, we have to rely on Kerry Law.
Yeah, well, then we're really in trouble because my show's small and its reach. Hopefully, it's got more influence than its limited reach, but one never knows about that. One topic I grapple with Rabbi, is why Jews in America, American Jews, keep voting for Democrats when they've embraced a major anti-Semitic leaders like Keith Ellison, who's in the pocket of Louis Farrakhan, and when they are anti-Israel. And then you look at Trump, who Israel says it itself has never had an ally as good as Donald Trump before. What is it that keeps Jews in America voting for the Democratic Party, the Democrat Party?
Yeah, it is. It's a great question. I've been asked it quite a number of times, and I actually take it up in this chapter in my book about liberalism. It's a little bit of a complicated thing. If you can give me a minute or two to talk, I can try to convey some of my thinking on.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Well, the basic premise at the outset of this chapter on liberalism is that, to give you the way I put it, or the way I try to explain it, I gave the example of a child that wants to stay up late and watch TV. Just imagine that. A little 8-year-old kid, he wants to watch TV. He tells his parents, "Can I have another hour?" They said, no. Each time he asks them, they say no. Finally, he says, "It's not fair. 8-year-olds shouldn't have a bedtime." That's the next thing he will inevitably say. So the way I analyzed it is that he really just wants to watch TV. But when he can't get his way, so what he does is he creates a different belief system that there's no authority, there's no parental authority, it's not fair, it's dictatorial. And his system is better, and his system just so happens to allow him to watch TV. That's why he goes for it. Uh-huh. So I said that the liberalizing trend basically starts with the fact that people are not too religious anymore. I mean, they're religious. A lot of people go to religious services, but a lot of things go on that were unheard of years back. You know, the promiscuity, the living outside of the compact of marriage, not taking, clerical authority that serious. But then people feel bad. Morality has been the bedrock of Western civilization for millennia. Mm-hmm. What do you do? I'm not acting right. So what they do is the mind unwittingly concocts a belief system that disparages traditional morality and enables people to do what they want. It's an unconscious process that creates a different set of beliefs that sanctions what you want to do. Mm-hmm. Like the child concocts a belief system that sanctions him watching TV. So, and that's why I write there that's why liberals are very intolerant of any suggestion that they're wrong, because they need to believe in these things, or else they can't continue doing what they want. They'll have to start going to church every week. So, they'll have to, live like people did, more or less, or at least outwardly, 60 years ago.
So if I can,
as a Jew,
So if I could kind of clarify what you're saying, basically, morality is there to put limits on your behavior so that we can have a civil society. But when it kind of gets crossed with selfishness and it becomes a justification for you to do what you want to do and to not listen to anybody else, then we find ourselves in the situation we're in right now.
Yes, exactly. And I just said that Jews have traditionally been observant. Throughout the centuries, anyone that's identified genetically as a Jew is descended from millennia of observant Jews. Mm-hmm. It's in our DNA. It's in our nature and nurture. So now that Jews are not observant, they feel funny in a way. Am I Jewish? What does it mean that I'm Jewish? How come I'm not the Sabbath observer? How come I don't eat kosher? So they tend to gravitate to a culture that minimizes or even trashes the importance of religion, which is modern liberalism. Mm-hmm. And this, I think, is behind, because the Orthodox Jews tend to be conservatives. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jews that are liberal tend not to be observant. And especially the more deeply observant Jews are almost all conservatives.
Interesting concept. Well, hey, perhaps that time is changing now. Maybe we're going to see things evolve. So again, we've been talking with Rabbi D.B. Ganz and his latest book. And just tell us where we find your book, Rabbi.
It's on Amazon. The older version is on Amazon, and I hope in a few weeks to have a newer version on Amazon.
All right. Well, we will look forward to it. Hey, questions, comments for myself or the good rabbi, email me, kl@kerrylutz.com, Twitter feed @KerryLutz, Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. Got some really funny Florida stuff. That's on my personal page. Would you believe a guy climbed into he thought it was an alligator pit at a zoo, but it turned out to be a crocodile pit. And imagine that he got bitten. You can't make this stuff up, folks. Anyway, Rabbi, thank you so much again for coming on with us. It's always enlightening discussing with you the issues of the day. We wish you the best of luck on the updated book. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Yes, thank you very much. I much enjoyed talking to you, being on your show, and I wish you great success.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.